Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Good evening and welcome to Carnegie Town Hall. I call this meeting of the Sioux Falls Planning Commission to order. I'd like to emphasize a couple of items out of respect for everyone. Please silence all electronic devices at this time if you have not already. And when you come to the podium, state your name and address for the record and make sure that everybody can hear you well. And please limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes so we can allow everyone who would like to speak to us that opportunity. At this time, we will consider the consent agenda. Please read those items on consent.
Consent.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to excuse myself from the consent agenda due to a project I'm working on.
Okay, thank you.
Item 1, approval of minutes. A, Planning Commission briefing on Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. B, Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, August 5th, 2020. Item 2, consent agenda petitions. A, petition Rezone 12605-2020, rezone from RS Single Family Residential Suburban District to RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District located at 3113 Southwestern Avenue. B, petition Rezone 12645-2020, rezone from the AG Agriculture District to the LW Live Work and C3 Commercial Community Districts located at the northwest corner of East 41st Street and South Ellis Road. C, petition Rezone 12684-2020, rezone from the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar C3 Commercial Community, RA3 Apartment Residential High Density, RD2 Townhome Residential Suburban, and O Office Districts to the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar C3 Commercial Community, RA3 Apartment Residential High Density, RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban, RD2 Townhome Residential Suburban, LW Live Work and CN Conservation Districts located at the southeast corner of West 85th Street and South Tallgrass Avenue. D, petition Rezone 12685-2020, rezone from the C3 Commercial Community District to the RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density District located East 77th Street and South Cliff Avenue. E, petition Rezone 12686-2020, rezone from the unzoned district to the I-1 Light Industrial District located north of 1510 West 51st Street. F, petition conditional use 012669-2020, conditional use permit for full service restaurant within 250 feet of sensitive uses at 2700 West 41st Street. G, petition ASP 12639-2020, alternative landscaping plan to allow trees for all required landscaping units in buffer yard at 5000, 5016, 5032, and 5048 East 57th Street. H, petition ASP 12701-2020, alternative landscaping plan to allow additional trees in lieu of a berm or fence located at 3600 South Grand Slam Avenue. And 3, consent agenda approval.
Thank you. And I understand the city wants to move one of these items to the regular agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, we'd ask that you move item 2D to the regular agenda. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other items other than 2D that anyone would like to speak to? If we hear one of the audience members would like to speak to an item, then we would move it to the regular agenda for discussion. Seeing none, I'll entertain a commission action.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the consent agenda as amended to remove item 2D.
Second. It's moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as amended with item 2D slid to the regular agenda. Is that correct?
Correct, yep.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is for the approval of the regular agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular agenda.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the regular agenda as previously stated with item 2D. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no. Motion carries.
Okay, and the first item is the pulled item 2D, petition rezone 12685-2020, rezone from the C3 Commercial Community District to the RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density District located at East 77th Street and South Cliff Avenue.
Commission, Albert Schmidt, Sioux Falls Planning Office. So tonight, this application for the rezone was amended from the original side. So we are asking for conditions and changes. So please note that, and the graphics here are reflective of the most current version of the request at hand. But the application, the applicant is for Joel Ingalls, the owner is South Cliff Grasslands. The request is to rezone from C3, which it currently is, into RA2 and RD2. So you can see here the split of those locations for allowed uses and forms. The location is on portions of 7301 South Cliff Avenue. It's approximately 6.13 acres in size. And again, the existing zoning is C3. The location here, we have updated site plan information for, so you can see on this site plan the breakdown of the existing C3, then the proposals here with the hashed areas, the RA2 and the RD2. And you can see here conceptually what those areas would kind of look like and what they're looking at this point in time building. So the reason for the rezoning is development is occurring. It's undeveloped currently with the area to the east also undeveloped. So looking at putting fourplexes in on the west side to help buffer against those townhomes and such villas down that side of it. And then the east side between that area and Cliff Avenue, which is further to the east, they're looking at putting in those apartments, which at this point in time, they're looking at units. They're about 30 and 32 units per building. So with this is kind of the general area as it looks today, undeveloped and open fields. And you can kind of see that side of it. With what it is zoned today, being C3, I should note that when we've done our review and staff and with our recommendation, today being zoned C3, apartments can go in there as long as they're above the first story. And so today's zoning would allow a 4-story structure, and each building in that could have up to 125 units based on existing standards and existing zoning. And then the proposed, in comparison, is 4 fourplexes and 3 30-some unit apartment buildings. And so that's kind of the biggest difference in that side of things. Now, with the notice going out, with the publication in the paper and the signs on site, we have received numerous concerns from the neighborhood around the area about things going on in this area. So the main concerns from there, we're talking about traffic, drainage, and then general neighborhood conditions and standards. Just today alone, for instance, we received 6 different email communications from 6 different people on concerns over this rezoning and that side. So we just want to make sure that we made it very clear that with the rezoning, staff considers this a down zone because there's less things that can actually go in there, smaller things. And then from a traffic standpoint, when you use the traffic modeling side of things, we look at it and go, how many trips in a day could this kind of development happen to it? And so just trying to estimate high on our side, we estimate 110 apartment units, and that was around 600 trips a day. Now, in comparison to what could go there today, being zone C3, a lot of things can go in there, but just picking something like a grocery store, kind of like a Fairway, so kind of like a mid-sized grocery store, about 30,000 square feet, that would be estimated daily traffic of 3,200 trips a day. So compared to that could be there today versus apartments, staff looks at that and goes, that's a significant down zone, so we don't have any issues on that side. That being said, the developer has worked with a current landowner on a plan to help really transition the area as appropriately as possible. And so that's why you see our conditions that we're looking to add on this. So staff is asking for a lot here tonight. We're asking that you amend the rezoning request from C3 to RA2 to C3 to RA2 apartment residential medium density and RD2 townhome residential suburban districts. And then 3 conditions on top of that. The 3 conditions are the RD2 zone only to allow 81 and or 82 forms, which is twin homes and fourplexes. And number 2, in the RD2 zone, a minimum of 5-foot-high berm along west property line abutting tract 1 of South Cliff Grasslands Addition. And third condition, in the RD2 zone, coniferous and deciduous trees required at a rate of at least 22.59 landscaping units per 100 feet or fraction thereof along the west property line abutting Tract 1 of South Cliff Grasslands Edition. So, it's a lot of words. What does that mean? Going back on the site plan, it basically mirrors exactly what you see here on the southwest corner of the property. You see a berm and you see trees, and those numbers of trees shown on this concept plan match the number that would be required with the standard that we're putting in place or looking to put in place. So with that in mind, staff recommends approval of this with the change in zoning to allow the RD2 as well and the 3 conditions based on transitions to the abutting areas such as future Veterans Parkway to the south, which would be a major street corridor going through the area to help provide that transition from the single-family townhomes down to that area, as well as the C3 zoning, which will continue to exist to the east, which could be developed in higher density stuff, as we talked about earlier today. So that transition should help get that from the interior of the neighborhood out to that area. Additionally, staff-wise, we've talked with other departments today, and when you talk about the traffic side of it, we definitely want to try to help out as much as we can in this side, and we've talked about how we think this development will actually decrease the potential amount of traffic that could go out there. But today, I was told that on 77th Street, our street traffic department did go out and mark no parking on both sides of the street as well. So enforcement of that policy should be starting relatively soon. And in addition to that, 77th and Cliff, which is just to the east here, should be expecting a traffic signal potentially next year, as early as next year. So those kind of additions should hopefully help out. Neighborhood traffic being cutting through the area should definitely help out. Once Veterans Parkway is put in place, that would be your primary access to get through that neighborhood quicker than going through residential streets. But at this time, that road network doesn't exist, so 85th Street is the next closest major collector to the south. With that long explanation, I'll take any questions or be here for you. Thank you.
I have a question to start, Albert. I think as you state, the extra conditions the city is recommending, can we vote on those, since we don't have them written in front of us, can we vote on them as referred to by you, or do we need to restate those as we get prepared to make a motion and that kind of thing?
I believe you can say as presented by staff.
Okay.
If you feel appropriate, or if you want to make your own tweaks to it, you're definitely welcome to make them put more trees in.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question for you, Albert. Tell us a little bit more about the 6 calls you received today. It's my understanding that those individuals it's my assumption, I should say, that those individuals were probably not aware of the conditions yet, considering the agenda came out without the proposed conditions. How did your discussion about those conditions go with the individuals you spoke with today? And perhaps they'll come up here and tell us a little bit about how they feel, but generally were the neighbors receptive to those?
So overall, with the communications I've had with most people, a lot of it focused on traffic more than anything else. So the conditions specific to the berm, the trees, and those things weren't as heavy of a focus point on that side. But the ones that we let out, we did let them know we had these additional conditions coming out on that side. And unfortunately, making changes kind of at this time isn't ideal for us, but it's what we had to do, and we wanted to make sure that we presented this all in the public forum, make sure that everybody knew what we were proposing. But the traffic side of it was the main focus on that side, and then we did explain, based on the proposals with the RD2 going on the west side and the current conceptual plan here of the 3 apartment buildings on the east side of this specific property, how based on our traffic modeling numbers, that would be a lower amount that potentially that what could go there. Also that, again, the current zoning, if built with either commercial below or garages below, apartments could go above it, so that they still could have apartments without any public hearing process today. So that's kind of the main focus we had on there, and we just reiterated that with our side of things, a rezoning from C3 to RA2 and RD2 is considered a downzoning in our opinion because of the intensity of uses, and so generally we're in favor of those, and then adding on top of that additional conditions that are above and beyond our minimum standard makes it more favorable in staff's opinion, looking at this from a land use code perspective.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Is the petitioner here this evening? Come forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Joel Engel, 5735 East 41st Street.
Anything to add to the city's staff report?
No, I apologize for Albert, or to Albert, for the confusion we caused this week. But what you see in the revised application is a result of us having meetings with the neighbors that are in closest proximity there, they're folks that we built homes for and sold to. And I wanted to point out too that we're also a property owner on the west side of this. Not only do we own this, but we're also still finishing Grand Prairie subdivision. And we still got several homes and a substantial amount of value there to be concerned about ourselves. So the result of the meeting and conversation I had with the villa owners that are in close proximity there, what you're seeing is a result of that meeting. I also, today I took 2 or 3 phone calls from residents in close to the area. Most of the conversations I had with them were just to give them an understanding of what the change was entitled, or what it encompassed, and trying to explain to them what the last minute change was here, so to speak, was in satisfaction to those closest in proximity. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, other questions?
Joel, you're okay with those conditions?
Yeah, we're actually not, so we're the petitioner and the landowner, but our company is not the developer and contractor on the project. It'll be Paradigm Construction is the contractor, and so we've worked this back and forth with them, and they're in agreement as well.
Okay, other questions?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this particular item? Come forward, state your name.
My name is Kevin Heyer. I live at 508 East 77th Street, so just a little bit into the development there. I know everybody gets upset about everything, really. I mean, traffic, this and that. There's a lot of potential issues, but the city needs to develop. I get that. My issue in speaking with people further east on 77th in these newer developments, we've been there 2 years building the homes. We had no idea. I mean, there's a sign posted. I suppose it's been there since it said it's on there on the date. I question that. It's a 1-foot sign in a big field that has also a 5-foot by 3-foot sign advertising the market at Grand Prairie, which I'm happy to see the changes and that there's still some potential for commercial and services that were promised with the, call it, sales pamphlet with all the lots, and then detailed as retail, drugstore, restaurant services that were promised, to be provided as part of the experience and being in this neighborhood, which we are lacking in that area. And so you're now paying a premium price for all these units and lots, and now it feels like it's kind of been snuck in because they understand that people would be upset with them. And I think there's good reason, especially as the developer that established this essentially, I think 2005, the HOA was incorporated by Har and Lemmy. And on the other side, on Minnesota Avenue, just this last year, American Bank and Trust put up a building, not on the development of Grand Prairie, but it reached out to the HOA, sent us all mailers, said we're hosting an open house. The email to the gal that runs the HOA, please attached is some plans. Here's exactly what they're doing. If you have questions, concerns, please come talk to Doug Tribble, come talk to me. Oh, and by the way, the city zoning board meeting on October 21st, this was sent on October 10th. Please come to the meeting if you want to discuss this further. Totally transparent. Maybe not happy with it, but he was very transparent with what he was doing, and they've got the structure built. The fact that the more people find out, and I think, so last night I sent out a message saying, hey, does anyone know about this? I would probably credit some of the phone calls to that, because there's been, I think, 20 replies saying, whoa, we have no idea this is happening. So we're not saying, oh, you can't do this. I had no idea there was going to be still potential for commercial. But I feel the fact that it feels so rushed and under the radar when they had a perfect venue to discuss it with the people in their development and get the good feedback to have the last minute changes, I think we could probably fine tune it better, make everybody happy and develop this area and not upset potentially, the developments that's there. So I'm not saying that it can't be done, but I think more input and more due diligence could make everybody happy and make a better result. So thank you for hearing me.
Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this item? Come forward, state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Atish Patel, 405 East 77th Street, just across the street from Kevin. The concern with traffic mostly is that East 77th, when we moved into the development, it was mostly, we have a lot of young families on that street. So just whatever else has gone into the neighborhood over the years, the concern has been we have a lot of young kids playing outside. And people passing by, I think we had a hearing about putting up a stop sign on either side of the street. That did not go anywhere. We did not get a stop sign on either side of the street. I think we have one on Minnesota, but nothing on Cliff. And so that does not, so I mean, I get that future, anything could go in there. But like he said, you know, maybe a discussion about it. We've been in there 5 years. We never heard of apartment buildings or anything like that going into that neighborhood. We have a huge apartment complex right behind us. We had to fight to get the lights lowered because it was like floodlights in our house. So it's just the development going around it. But traffic mainly is the concern because we have a lot of young families on that street. And so hopefully when we're kind of talking about this or getting into a bigger discussion, we can maybe keep that in mind as well. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have questions? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this item? Come forward, please.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Talbot. I live at 813 East 77th Street. I had to think a minute because we've just resided there since May. I've had a chance, along with neighbors on either side of me, to talk with Mr. Engelland about this, and we were the ones that kind of proposed the berm and the trees on there to try to create a visual buffer to an extent to try to maintain the integrity of the area that we were in. And we were very pleased with the results of working with Mr. Engel on that. And you know, tonight I just asked a question too about the trees because you know, when I looked at the particular diagram, it looked like just one row of trees, and we were thinking more of a staggering aspect. And he assured me that that was what the concept. You know, the big concern of us, the two neighbors that I have on either side of me, we're on the southwest edge of this, so the berm is actually going to be. It's a little ways from my house, but it's definitely, the next two neighbors are closer. So, you know, we were just hoping that would create a transition, a visual transition in our neighborhood to maintain what we thought would be the integrity of it. And, you know, I could speak for myself, and I think at least the two other neighbors, that we were pleased with the progress and the changes that were made in that particular aspect. We all share the same concern that these other gentlemen have expressed about traffic concerns. Just in the short time that I've lived there, it is somewhat of a challenge even with the existing traffic, largely because of the developmental that's going on. There's a lot of trash containers that are on the street, outhouses when the crews are working through there. There's a lot of parking and I got this kink in my neck that coming out of my driveway, it's kind of hard to see. I take a lot of care, and I'm very thankful that I got a rear camera in my car that I can watch for things. But I think that there is going to be some challenges that the residents are going to face with traffic and the potential for, you know, crashes that are going to occur from that just because of the nature of traffic. I worked in that line of business most of my professional career, so. But in that respect too, I understand the traffic counts, and I'm not as concerned. I think that when the highway gets through, I saw designs for that back when I moved to Sioux Falls back in 2002, so I know it's going to be a while. But I think that will alleviate some of it. But in the meantime, I think there is going to be increased traffic issues on 77th as people see that as a corridor to go from essentially the east side of that development through to get to Minnesota Avenue, being it's as main of a link as it is. So other than that, I don't have anything else. Thank you, Commission, for allowing me the moment to talk.
Okay, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none, I think we'll close public comment. I'd like to have the petitioner come back forward and comment on any of the comments that were made during the public input, if you'd like.
Is there something specific anybody would want me to address?
Oh, just your option.
Okay. As far as notice, I mean, the signs are posted as required. The notices went out from planning office as required. some of the statements that are made, I mean, there are several concept plans out on this property. We've owned this now since, I think the purchase year was in 2008. We've acquired several properties together. So we've thrown out a lot of ideas over the years. We had hopes that this would be more of a neighborhood grocery anchored retail type center. But the climate today as it is and retail and things have changed. We can't sit and wait forever on the property for the perfect opportunity. So we're moving on with what we feel is the next best opportunity. So that's all I think that I care to address.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So with that, entertain commission action.
Chair, I'd make a motion to approve item 2D with the additional conditions as stated by staff.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded to approve item 2D with conditions as stated by staff. Any other discussion? Albert? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll just say if I could real quick, I'll be voting in favor of this one. It sounds like there's really been a lot of back and forth between the developer and the neighbors, and I think that's exactly what this entire process is about. Yes, there is a notice process, and that's really when a lot of these discussions do kick off with neighbors, and we try to find a compromise, and I think the city did a good job with that, and you can really see that showing with some of the conditions that have been added on. Generally considered a downgrade in density here, and what you're going to have here is effectively residential, and I think that's ultimately a benefit to those individuals that are single-family homeowners in the area. It definitely does sound like to me that there is a traffic issue. I don't know if that's necessarily in our purview and something that is necessarily up to the Planning Commission to resolve, but I think city staff can find some common ground there and maybe do some stop signs and other things to help the neighborhood out there. And then I'd also say, there's plenty of ample time here for public input going forward as well. This is just the kickoff here, and on August 15th and September 6th, there's plenty of time for the neighborhood to go before the city council and discuss concerns and possibly make changes going forward as well. So I will be voting in favor of this.
Okay. Other discussion?
Mr. Chair, just to continue on Commissioner Nyberg's comments, appears there was a traffic impact study associated with this particular rezoning. It was reviewed and approved. It doesn't state the actual study in here, what all those details are, but to echo what Commissioner Nyberg stated, if there are concerns, as this develops, there are still traffic issues, no desire for people to need to rely on their review cameras or get whiplash over trying to avoid traffic coming through this area, do let the city know so that the appropriate folks, which isn't always what we're looking at here in terms of land use, can review that and can address that. And certainly if you see speeding and stuff like that, call law enforcement if any violations of that nature, so it can also too get the attention that it needs. But for that, I too, not just the elements, but the transitional elements, the down zoning, if you will, going into a high-end residential area. This does make a lot of sense, and I too am pleased to see the collaborative effort in coming up with solutions here for berms and landscaping and such. So I too will support this.
Okay. Other discussion from the commission? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Item 5A, rezone 12667-2020, rezone from the RD2 Townhome Residential Suburban District to the O Office District located at 2300 South Ronziek Drive.
The applicant here is Damian Grable with Earnhardt Griffin. The owner is Westwood Valley LLC. It's located at 2300 South Ronziek Avenue. This is north of West 41st Street and west of the T. Ellis Road. The applicant is proposing to construct one 34-foot by 104-foot storage building that will have roughly 9 separate storage units on it. Setbacks, the concept plan does indicate the required 15-foot front yard setbacks. Parking is handled by each of the units. There's a parking space in front. They are required to level a buffer yard along the north, east, and south sides, as you can see that they have shown that on their concept plan. The proposed zoning changes does meet the Shape Sioux Falls Comprehensive Plan, as there are minor conflicts with adjacent land uses that can be addressed through the buffer yard and then the residential compatible design requirements. However, staff does feel that the design of the proposed residential compatible storage unit should provide a little bit more of a residential feel. The garages should have at least a minimum of a 20-foot front yard setback instead of the 15 required. And that's to help them fit in a little, excuse me, a little bit better with the existing townhomes. Those are required 25-foot setbacks. So we want to push these garages back a little bit so they don't stick out kind of like a sore thumb. The other thing that we, staff does think that we should do is not have this large, long building on there. We would like to see that broken up into 2 buildings with a minimum of 10 feet between those 2 buildings. These 2 conditions should help alleviate any incompatibilities with this existing residential, with the existing residential uses in the neighborhood. If this rezoning is denied, the parcel will continue to be zoned RD2 townhome residential. And this parcel is not deep enough. It's kind of a remnant left over from the old West Side corridor to really construct a townhome. That's what's been constructed to the north and south here. Because the subject application is consistent with the Shape Sioux Falls Comprehensive Plan and includes the residential design elements that we have discussed, and they're providing buffer yards, staff does recommend approval of the rezone with those following conditions that I indicated: a minimum of the 20-foot front yard setback, and then a minimum of 2 buildings with a separation between the buildings of at least 10 feet. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you. Is the petitioner here tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Damian Gribble with Earhart Griffin and Associates, 300 North Dakota Avenue, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 57104. As staff has stated, what we're proposing here is neighborhood residential storage. We expect the people in the neighborhood to be able to use this to store campers, boats, lawn equipment, patio equipment, seasonal equipment, nice, easy, accessible storage units. We do want residential style type garages, so we want it to blend in with the neighborhood. We do propose lighting on these buildings, so we will illuminate them with residential style lights, and we did provide cut sheets to staff on the lighting provided. On our final site plan, we will provide illumination plans, so a photometric plan to meet the city's requirements of light spilling over the property lines as well. So we'll meet the city requirements from that. We want a nice, safe, secure storage units for the neighborhoods to use. There will be no power inside the garages, so this technically be a cold storage. So there won't be any water or sewer hookups to these garages, and they won't have access to power inside the garages either. So they won't have that. We think it's a good use for the property. As staff said, we have a remnant piece from Highway 100 that came through here. So we're trying to put the property to use. We do agree with staff's conditions, so we will accept the 20-foot front yard setback. That's not a problem. And we will remove a unit as well. So we will split these units up in 2. It'll blend in with the neighborhood, and we'll have that 10-foot gap in between both the units. We'll provide the landscaping around the edge with the berm or fence, along with the landscaping units. So we'll do all that. That site plan will be approved again by city staff, along with the zoning. So there'll be, staff will have another chance to review and approve and make sure that we meet these conditions that they put on this piece of property. So I would ask for your approval, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I don't understand the elements of cold storage versus other options there. So without access to electricity inside these units, aren't they going to be a little dark? Is that a safety concern, or is that just not so much a concern for the type that these will be?
Will there be a what? I'm sorry?
Will there be lights inside these? Because you're not going to have electricity inside the units, right?
Probably not, no. So they'll have the outside lighting and they'll have to open the garage door, but we don't want anything else going on inside the garages, you know, any other type uses. So that's all the power, or that's all they'll have inside there. Yep.
Damian, can you talk to me a little bit about the ownership history of the property? I know Westwood Valley LLC is the owner, and it's just kind of a goofy parcel with the lack of depth to it. So I guess my question is, has this group tried to develop it otherwise previously, but due to the lack of depth, this kind of garage concept came about, or was this kind of the initial intent?
How far do you want to go back? Without going into the weeds too much, you know, this, again, Highway 100 was proposed on this section line, or quarter section line, I believe. So at a certain point in time, we dedicated 40 feet of right-of-way. Another 60 feet was supposed to be purchased by the city or dedicated as development came along. Highway 100 moved to TLS Road, if I'm speaking properly. We had already purchased or dedicated the 40 feet, and then we had to move ahead, so the lot to the east has the deepest lot. It is my understanding that the developers have approached those property owners to purchase, but I don't think they could come to an agreement. There's property owners that have to be, all have to come to agreement, plus mortgage lenders as well. So it's quite a tapestry of things that have to come together, and it proved to be pretty difficult. So we did pursue normal development, I guess you would, with what the residential style development. It didn't come together that way.
Okay, other questions from the commission?
So have you met with the 4 adjacent neighbors? I know you said you couldn't come to an agreement for the property sale, but have you talked with them about this project, and what were their thoughts?
No, I have not. No.
Okay, other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and then entertain commission action.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve item 5A with the 2 conditions as noted by staff in the write-up.
Okay,
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to approve item 5A with the recommendations from staff. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
The next item is item 5B, petition designate district for tax incremental district, a TIF 23 application for a proposed TIF district.
Evening Commission, Dustin Powers with Planning and Development Services. Tax increment financing, or TIF, is an economic development financing tool established by South Dakota codified law. TIFs allow for property tax dollars for a specific geographic area to be utilized and applied toward eligible public and private improvements, and to help stimulate and develop the economic welfare and prosperity of the state. The way TIF is used is that the positive tax increments, or the positive taxes generated from projects that occur within the district, are the positive tax increment, and that increment can be used to pave down those improvements that are eligible, that are dictated by the governing body, which would be the city council. Improvements are typically financed and then paid off in future years through tax increment proceeds. So those positive tax increment dollars, again, are used to help pay down those eligible expenses that are brought forward and approved by city council. The city currently has 12 active TIF districts in the city of Sioux Falls. This, again, would be the proposed TIF boundary for tax increment financing district 23 to the city of Sioux Falls. The petitioner is the Sioux Falls Development Foundation, which is the economic development partner for the city. One of their missions is to promote economic development through the developing of development parks across the city of Sioux Falls, one of which is Foundation Park, which makes up over 800 acres in the northwest corner of Sioux Falls. Bob Munt, Dean Diezik, and Mike Gray are here with the Development Foundation. Will be able to answer any questions related to their organization and this request moving forward. There are two items that are brought forward to Planning Commission for consideration to fully implement tax increment financing. The first is the district boundaries, which we'll have and are presenting to you here tonight. The second is the project plan. Each of these items are brought to the Planning Commission, in which then the Planning Commission makes the recommendation to City Council for approval. Designating the district boundaries sets the area for which the positive tax increment can be collected from future projects within the district. Those again are those increment dollars are what are used to pay for eligible project cost. And those boundaries, again, are what we're discussing tonight. The project plan is required to address a number of different items. It's required to address the development that will create the increment within the district, the eligible improvements, the economic feasibility of the district, the estimated project cost, the fiscal impact that this will have on all the taxing entities before and after the TIF is created, as well as the methods for financing, among a number of other items. All of those items related to a project plan will be presented to you at a future meeting, and that'll be brought to you at a future date. The proposed boundary is located again in Foundation Park, which is over 800 acres located in northwest Sioux Falls. To orient everyone, where we're located at is just west of I-29 and north of I-90, and just north of McCrossin's Boys Ranch, if everyone's familiar with that. The proposed district is approximately 540 acres of Foundation Park. As you can see from some of the imagery on the screen, the current developments that have occurred in Foundation Park are all located south of the rail tracks. The intention of creating this TIF district would be to utilize the future positive tax increments from future projects to help expand the development of Foundation Park North, which is the portion of Foundation Park north of the railroad tracks. The purpose of creating the TIF district, prior to understanding, again, all those details associated with the project plan and what those projects will entail, is to proactively prepare for growth due to the increased interest being shown to both South Dakota and Sioux Falls for economic development projects. Though the Sioux Falls Development Foundation doesn't currently have a tenant as part of a project plan being brought forward at this time, the current environment is very fluid. And therefore, setting the district now will better position the Sioux Falls Development Foundation to prepare and market the expansion of development-ready sites in Foundation Park North. From a planning perspective, when we look at TIFs and the TIF boundaries, we look at a couple of different items. Mainly, we look at how these conform with our current zoning ordinance as well as our comprehensive plan. The entire area of Foundation Park has already been annexed into city limits and met all the criteria required for being annexed into the city. When we look at our future land use map for the city of Sioux Falls, this area is all identified as heavy industrial use, which is consistent with the uses already in Foundation Park, our zoning ordinance, and our comprehensive plan. Also, when we look at TIF eligibility, we have to look at codified law. The city of Sioux Falls must make one of the following findings: that either the area within the district is blighted, or that the area and planned improvements within the area will stimulate the development of the general economic welfare of the state through the promotion and advancement of industrial, commercial, manufacturing, agricultural, or natural resources. The city must also find that those improvements of the area are likely to significantly enhance the value and substantially all of the other real property within the district. Based upon the fact that the main objectives of developing Foundation Park is to promote economic development for the city and the state, the statutory requirements are met, and it will satisfy the requirements of stimulating the general economic welfare by significantly increasing the value of the properties within the district. Historically, when we look at TIFs in Sioux Falls, we look at it in three different purposes. One, to encourage redevelopment of deteriorated or otherwise blighted areas. Two, to stimulate economic development in the community by assisting projects to promote long-term economic vitality to the city of Sioux Falls. And three, to stimulate increased private investment in areas that would have otherwise remained underdeveloped or undeveloped, in which, in the long term, provide significant source of additional revenue, property tax revenue to all taxing entities. Based on the historic context, the planning considerations, the TIF eligibility requirements that have all been previously discussed, as well as the economic development success that the Sioux Falls Development Foundation has had across their development parks in Sioux Falls. Staff is recommending support and approval of the creation of TIF District number 23. With that, we'd be able to answer any questions that you would have.
Any questions from the commission? No? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and speak to this one? Seeing none, entertain commission action.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve TIF District number 23 as presented. Do I understand that motion correctly? Okay. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I could, I would just say there's two things that, I look at that ultimately provide me comfort with this application. And the first of them is obviously the quality of the applicant. I think the success and history of the Development Foundation is well known, and I think that provides me with a lot of comfort going forward. And in particular, when you look at the statute, as referenced by Dustin, we're supposed to look at to see whether this project will stimulate and develop the general economic welfare and prosperity of the state of South Dakota, and I think that's exactly what the Development Foundation has done in the past, so I have no doubt they'll do it at this project as well. Also, I saw here in our packet that this is the 12th active TIF district in the city of Sioux Falls, and that's the other thing that provides me comfort is when you look at others in the state, and our good friends out to the west have 22 active TIF districts, and we're at 12. So knowing that we've got that number under control also provides me comfort. So for those two reasons, I'll be voting in favor of this TIF district.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. I believe the next item on our agenda is for public input on non-agenda items. Is there any public input from our audience? Seeing none, entertain commission action for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned. Make it a good night, Sioux Falls.